Jean Lannes was born on April 10th, 1769, in Lectoure, in the province of Gascony in France. He was the child of a landowner and merchant, so the young Lannes grew up slightly better than most Gascons, below the rank of noble. He grew up in his teen years as a dyer's apprentice in Lectoure, but also due to his slight advantage of his father's successful business, he was able to be given even a surface-level education. But as a young man following the fall of the monarchy, he would enlist in his local volunteer battalion and be elected to the rank of sergeant major and serve in the War of the Pyrenees, which by the end of the war he'd be given the rank of chef de brigade, chief of the brigade. He would also, in this time during the War of the Pyrenees, meet a fellow future Marshal of France, Louis-Nicolas Davout. Lannes would then move over to the Army of Italy in 1795, where he would serve with distinction at the Battle of Loana. But a snag would come. Following the Thermidorian reaction, the army went under reforms, including elected officers losing their commissions to officers based on merit. This would be a snag, but Lannes would be able to work his way back up to his previous position as a brigadier commander, just in time to meet his new commander in 1796, Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon, with Lannes at his side, would win campaigns across northern Italy, even at the famous Battle of Austerlitz, where Lannes would be wounded, but Napoleon would lead a wave of victories through northern Italy, finally ending the conflict with the Treaty of Campio Formia, where Napoleon and Lannes would actually impose their terms on the Austrians, not the French government's terms. Through this campaign, Lannes and Napoleon had become the closest of friends, Napoleon often taking Lannes' advice on tactical and even personal matters. When the French Republic invaded the Papal States, Lannes would be part of the cavalry detachment and lead patrols outside of Rome. The next time Lannes will see action is when Napoleon handpicked him, along with a few other future marshals, to go to Egypt and Syria. He would serve as a brigade commander under General Jean-Baptiste Kléber, serving from Alexandria to the French invasion of Syria, where Lannes would be instrumental in the French withdrawal from the country. He'd be wounded at the Battle of Aspern-Essling in 1799. This would return him to France, where he would stay idle until November of 1799. By Napoleon's side, Lannes supported him through the coup of 18th of Brumaire, which escalated Bonaparte from just a war hero to now the head of the French government and state. Napoleon would reward Lannes not only by promoting him to general of the division, but also now placing him as commander of the Consular Guards, the precursor to the legendary Imperial Guard. In 1800, during the War of the Second Coalition, Lannes would command the advance guard of the Army of Italy that crossed the Alps. He would defeat General Austrian force at Montebello in the Italian province of Lombardy on June 9, 1800. This would help clear the road for Napoleon and the main army to march on Marengo. Napoleon would give him the title of Duke of Montebello for this battle in the future. At Marengo on June 14th, he would command a corps of over 7,000 men and help reinforce the faltering French army. This would lead to the battle being on the brink of defeat to becoming a great victory. Napoleon would return to Paris, but at this point jealousy was filling the officer corps. Generals like Murat and Bessières hated the relationship Lannes and Napoleon had. They began to point out his failures over the budget deficit. Lannes would not be punished, but he would be removed from the army and not trusted with such duties again, and he'd be sent to Portugal as an ambassador. But the friendship did not die. Lannes would purchase the Chateau de Maison outside of Paris in 1804, and he would have one apartment in the house specifically for Napoleon when he would visit. Things would change that year as well, when Napoleon would finally declare himself emperor and the nation the Empire of France on May 18th, 1804. Lannes would be the part of the first 18 men named Marshals of France, along with both men who tried to ruin him, Bessières and Murat. With the other marshals, Lannes would present himself to Napoleon at the coronation and give his oath of loyalty and declare, "Long live the Emperor." Again, Lannes was at Napoleon's side, and the War of the Third Coalition was in full speed, and Lannes was commanding the left wing of the Grande Armée. Originally, the French were planning an invasion of England from Boulogne, but following the defeat of the combined Franco-Spanish fleet at Trafalgar on October 21st, 1805, Napoleon had ended that plan. Upon hearing that Austria, at the time the Holy Roman Empire, and Russia had allied and were planning on attacking France, Napoleon directed Lannes and his other marshals to move his 200,000 men army from the west coast of France to the heart of the German states. On December 1st, Napoleon and Lannes, with about 75,000 men, had arrived in a small town named Austerlitz. The marshals gathered and Napoleon began to create his masterpiece. On December 2nd, he would allow the Austrians and Russians to take control of, in quote, superior positions. Napoleon thought clever, feint retreats, flanking, and surprise assaults was able to decimate the Austro-Russian army, being commanded by both Emperor Tsar Nicholas and Holy Roman Emperor Francis II. The Battle of Austerlitz would end the War of the Third Coalition and also dissolve the Holy Roman Empire, which had been founded in the 800s under Charlemagne. Peace would only last for a few months, and the War of the Fourth Coalition would start in October of 1806. Lannes would be in his prime during this war. The Prussian Queen Louisa and England had convinced Prussian King Frederick William III to go to war with France. The Marshal would win battles in the Thuringian Forest and at the Battle of Sarsfield, and then again at the Battle of Jena. He would not be engaged at the Battle of Elua, but he would fight at the Battle of Friedland on June 14, 1807, which would end the War of the Fourth Coalition and induct Russia into the continental system that Napoleon had created to oppose England, following the Treaty of Tilsit on July 7, 1807. Lannes would be rewarded the Duchy of Siris in the modern-day Poland, after Prussia was forced to cede territory to France. But Lannes would not be able to enjoy his duchy. In 1808, he was named Commander-in-Chief of all French forces in Spain. He would crush the Spanish under Javier Castaños at the Battle of Tudela, which would lead to the road to Madrid almost completely clear. Napoleon would move towards Madrid, and Lannes would lay siege to the city of Zaragoza from December 1808 to February of 1809. 6,000 French will be wounded or killed. However, 30,000 Spanish soldiers will be wounded or die, and 34,000 Spanish civilians would be dead, starved, or die from the battle itself. Lannes, starting to slowly be disillusioned with his friend, was quoted saying that this damned Bonaparte is going to get us killed. Following the fall of Madrid, he would return to France, as the War of Fifth Coalition had begun, and Napoleon again went to his friend for help. Lannes would again be given command of the advance guard and lead the French to Vienna, fighting small engagements around Écumont. But on May 21st, 1809, Lannes and Marshal Massena, after crossing the Danube River, were immediately attacked by Austrian forces. The Battle of Aspern-Essling had begun, and with his usual gusto, while he awaited the rest of the army to circulate, Lannes was leading the attack of the advance guard on the Archduke Charles and his 80,000 men. Lucky for Charles, the French had to cross the river, and were initially attacking Austrians in pieces, which took away the French army's 95,000 men size advantage. The next day, however, the French cleared the Austrians from Aspern under Massena, but Essling was not as fortunate. Lannes had held off the Austrians until night the day before, but the Austrians struck hard and pushed Lannes and his surviving men from the village. As the fighting continued, Lannes, Massena, and Napoleon were finally forced back across the Danube, and the Austrians were able to claim victory, even blowing up the French bridges with fire barges. Sometime during the fighting, Lannes had been shot by a ricocheted cannonball when he was resting on the side of the battlefield. It has smashed his leg and knee, though he professed to be fine. Upon arriving at the hospital, the surgeon, Dominique Jean Lannes, observed the marshal, stating that for any other soldier he would let him die, but because he was Marshal Lannes, he quickly amputated his right leg 2 minutes after he arrived at the scene. Napoleon soon arrived at the scene in complete horror at his friend and the condition he was in. Members of the guard cleared onlookers back as Napoleon knelt next to Lannes to speak to him with tears in his eyes. Lannes gave Napoleon a startling confession. It is not to concern you of my wife and children that I talk to you thus. In dying for you, I do not need to command them to you. Your glory makes it your duty to protect them, and I am addressing you these final criticisms. I do not fear that I shall change your disposition towards them. You have just committed a grave error, one which has deprived you of your best friend, but it will not change you. Your insatiable ambition will finish you. You sacrifice without need, without attention, without regret, the men who serve you best. Your ingratitude pushes away those very people who admire you. Those that are left around you are nothing but fawners. I see not one friend who would dare to tell you the truth. You will be betrayed. You will be abandoned. Hasten to bring this war to an end. It is the wish of your generals, and it is the wish of your people. You will never be more powerful, but you can certainly be more loved. Forgive a dying man these truths, for he cherishes you so. Napoleon, crying, embraced Lannes until he went into a drugged rest. He'd be moved to a home in Vienna where he would finally pass away on May 31st, 1809. The Marshal was only 40 years old. Napoleon made sure his friend received the best funeral a Marshal of France could have, and he was buried in the Hôtel des Invalides. He would be exhumed and in a large ceremony in 1810, where he would be buried in the Pantheon in Paris, where he still rests today. The loss of Lannes would crush Napoleon. Of all the loss as a soldier he had, he would never recover from the loss of Lannes. It is even believed that Lannes directly led to the divorce of Napoleon and his first wife, Josephine de Beauharnais, as a marriage pact with Austria was the best way to ensure peace. So Napoleon would marry the Austrian Emperor Francis II's daughter, Maria Louise, and create what seemed like a strong alliance between Austria and France, which, after the war with Russia, would sadly not survive. Lannes, unlike other marshals, would not see the fall of France, or the fall of his dear friend Napoleon. His legacy is still studied to this day at the French Staff College for his tactics at the Battle of Salzfield, but he is often forgotten to people, as he was a subject of jealousy from other marshals for his friendship with the emperor. But unlike them, he wasn't his emperor. He was his friend. Thanks for joining us today in our second episode of Napoleon's Marshals. Jean Lannes is often forgotten by history, but his effect cannot be forgotten. Hope you enjoyed the content. If you're new to the channel, I ask that you please subscribe. And if you're a returning subscriber, please like, share, and comment. And we will see you all in the next one.